Alright, so we're back and now we are going to start doing the overview from scratch. So the first thing to do is to open up your third person character blueprint and add a physical animation component. So off of here we're going to drag this out and we're going to set skeletal mesh component. And we're going to use our mesh as our skeletal mesh. Now I'm going to duplicate this, and off of this I'm going to apply physical animation settings below. We want to apply it below a skeletal tree bone. So if we come over here to the skeletal tree, you'll see how everything's laid out here. Or if you come to the physics asset, you'll see that these are our bodies. These are the things we're going to be controlling. So I have hand L, hand R, foot L, and foot R set to kinematic for the physics type. If you want to do that, you can. I also have the pelvis set to kinematic as well, so that it always follows the animation. But you don't have to do that, it's not really necessary. So first off, we're going to drag out and we're going to promote this to a variable. And I'm just going to call it Spine01. And since Spine01 isn't assigned to physics body for my particular mesh, I'm not going to use it. But what you need to do is whichever physics body is right above the pelvis, just select it. And so for me, that's Spine02. So if yours is Spine01, then check include self. If not, then just uncheck it. It's not really that important in this case, but as long as you're above the pelvis. So out here we're going to drag off of the physical animation data and we're going to make it. We're just going to set this manually for all of them, for all the bones that are under Spine01, which would be spine 2, spine 3, neck 1, head, upper arm, left arm, right arm, hands, all that. So for this, I'm just going to say 500 for the orientation strength, 100 for the velocity, 500 for this, and 100 for the velocity strength. If you want a better breakdown of this, make sure you go back and check out the overview video. I'll have a link to both of these in each of them. So after you've done that, just compile and save it. Now we need to get our mesh, and we need to set all bodies below simulate physics. And I'm just selecting the first one and then the second one. I'm pressing Q and it'll align the first one with the second one. Now I'm going to duplicate this and I'm going to do new simulate because we want a new simulate. Now I need to set all bodies below physics blend weight, and I'm just going to have the blend weight as 0 because by default I want it off. You don't have to turn it off, but by default, for me, I just want it not to. I'm going to not include the self for the spine 1 because spine 2 is the one right above that one, and that will be affected by these settings. So over here on mesh, we need to go to custom, and we need to ignore physics body and destructible. We need to block world static and dynamic. We need to block camera or ignore camera. And yeah, that's it. So let's go into project settings. and go into collision. It's under engine collision, and we're going to create a new trace channel. I'm just going to call it PA for physical animations. You can call it whatever you want. I'm going to set the default response to ignore. And I'm going to close that, compile this, and now you have the new trace channel right here. For the capsule component, I'm going to go to custom. I want to make sure generate overlap events is checked. It should be checked by default. And I want to overlap for the PA, the trace channel we just made. And I want to overlap for world dynamic, because I don't want world dynamic, I don't want dynamic objects bouncing off of our collision sphere. I want it to bounce off the character, the mesh, not off the collision sphere. So that's why I'm doing that. For the camera boom, I am going to, for me, I'm going to enable camera lag. You don't have to, but I like it. Disable do collision test. That'll prevent from jerking the camera around when a ball gets too close to it. With that out of the way, select your capsule component and scroll down under events. And the second one down should be on component begin overlap. We're just going to select that. And actually, before we get started on this, let's go ahead and do an event tick too. So right click and type an event tick and press enter. And now let's set up our turret. So I'm just going to right click here. I'm going to select a new blueprint class. I'm going to call it, it's going to be an actor type. I'm going to call it BP turret 2 for mine. You can call it BP turret or whatever you want. Open it up. We're going to create a cube. You don't really have to do this part. You can skip it if you want. I'm going to scroll down, select cylinder. I'm just going to set this to 0.2 and 0.2. And then I'm just going to drag this down like this. I am going to duplicate it. I'm going to call this one barrel. I'm going to make it a child of cylinder so that it follows it. And then I'm going to drag it up. And I'm going to press E to go into rotation mode. We're going to rotate this 90 degrees in either direction, it don't really matter. And I'm going to zero this out. And let's see. Let's do 90 on Y. Yeah. You can just manually rotate it if you want. Now for this, I'm just going to go like that. And now I am going to create an arrow to indicate where this is. I'm going to zero this out, the position and rotation, so that we can know which way this is oriented here. Okay, so it's oriented up, which we don't want, so we want to rotate this 90 degrees. You can say negative 90 degrees right here on the Y if you want it to be precise. So with that out of the way, we're going to do a scene component. This is where we're going to spawn our object, and we don't want it spawning inside or too close to the barrel. So we're going to move that out like so. Now I'm going to drag this under the cube because I want to make sure that the scale of this is Well, actually, that's not necessary. We'll just put that back under the barrel. We'll do it this way. So, let's see, we want to spin the cylinder so that it's facing the player, but we need a reference to the player, so we need to get player pawn. We need to cast to third person character directly, and you need to go to third person character and create a variable, and we'll call it BP turret 2 in my case. And then I'm gonna set the variable type as BP turret 2. And off of here, I'm just going to promote this variable to reference. I'm going to call it char ref because we need that. And off of here, I'm going to drag it out. I'm going to say set BP turret 2. And as we're going to pass in self, get a reference to self right here. So we're going to set this variable's value to this blueprint's, to a reference to this blueprint. Now I'm just going to hold down Control and drag out the char ref, and we're going to say get look. Let's see. Look angle. Oh, yeah, my bad. We need to get the actor location, and we need to get world location of the cylinder, because this get actor location is in world space. So we need both of those to be in world space. And we need to get angle, let's see, rotation, angle, no, look at, find look at rotation, my bad. Find look at rotation, and actually you want to start at the cylinder, and you want the target to be the character, so we're going to swap these around. Then we're going to duplicate this reference to the cylinder. We're going to set world rotation. What this does is it'll keep the cylinder rotated towards the character. That's it. Now we're going to create a custom event. So add custom event. We're going to call it fire projectile. And off here we're going to spawn actor from class. Now we need to create that actor. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click in here. We're going to create another blueprint. We're going to say actor. It's going to be of type actor, and we're going to call it BP bullet 2 in my case. And I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to add a static mesh to it. And as that static mesh, I'm going to choose, let's see, editor sphere. So choose the editor sphere, and then we're going to lock this scale value, and then we're going to set it to 0.2. And we're going to set the mass in kilograms to 1. And we need it to simulate physics. And I believe we need to do a custom under collision presets, and we need to set PA to overlap. That should be it for this. If we have any issues, we'll deal with them when it comes. So now we're going to say BP bullet 2. That's going to be our class type. And as a transform, we're going to get the arrow. We're going to, oh no, we don't want the arrow. We want the scene component. Get the scene component and get world location. Or get world transform, I should say. Drag this out and right click on the spawn transform and split the struct pin. Do it for this one too. We just want the location. We don't want the rotation or the scale. So with that out of the way, we need to drag off the return value and say add force static mesh. That's fine. It'll add the static mesh. So you could have just drug off of here and said get static mesh and then add force, but whatever. Now off of here, we're going to multiply vector by float. And as the vector, we're going to get the arrow. And we're going to get its forward vector. Get forward vector. And that gives us a directional vector, a unit vector to be precise, with values between 0 and 1 for x, y, z. And we're going to multiply that so that it is pointing in the right direction, but at a, let's see, so type in like 2 million, that should be fine. It's a high value, but you know, you could go back over here and tweak and turn the mass in kilograms down lower if you wanted to use a smaller force, but we're just going to do it like that. So that should be it for this. So over here in our third person blueprint, we can right click and type in keyboard E, and that'll give us our E key. And we are going to get this BP turret 2 reference, and we're going to call the fire projectile event when we press this key. So let's go ahead and test that out to make sure, and I'm going to remove this one for now and put this one in the scene. So now you see it's following the character and it's firing the projectile. So with that out of the way, you can go ahead and close these for now in case we have any issues that we need to go back and fix. So off of here, I'm going to say other actor. I'm going to cast to BP bullet 2. And that's just to check to make sure that this is a bullet and not something else. You don't really have to do this. It's not necessary. But ideally, you would want this to be a master class of a projectile type. So for your projectiles, you would want a master class, and then each different type of projectile that you would have a child of that master class for those projectiles. And that way you could say, hey, cast to master projectile class, and then only the projectiles would affect this. So I'm just going to copy this, set all bodies below physics blend weight, and I'm going to paste it right here and hook it up, and we're going to change this physics blend weight to 1. Now we need to create a variable. It's going to be a Boolean variable, so we'll change this to Boolean, and then we'll change the name to disable PA but in my case I already made one and I forgot to delete it, so we'll just use that one, or I'll just use that one. So I'm going to get that right here on the event tick that we created earlier, and we're going to branch it. Now what we want to do is we want to create a custom event. Add custom event. We're going to call this disable PA physical animation, and then we need to let's see, we need to go ahead and call this over here. So we're going to do a call function disable physical animation, or no, I need to set timer by function name, and you can just select this, press F2, Control C to copy, and then you can paste that right here. We're going to say 0.2 on this. And then off of here we're going to do a flip-flop. The first time it calls, we want it to enable this value. Let's set it, hold down Alt and drag it out. We want it to enable it. I'm pressing Control W to duplicate that. Then we want to disable it the second time it gets called. So for the first time it gets called, it's going to do this. We're going to create one more. We're going to say add custom event, and we're going to call this one slow disable PA, or slowly. You can call it whatever you want. And I'm just duplicating this over here. And then for this we're going to do an interp2, or F interp2, as in float interp2. And I'm going to drag this out, and I'm going to promote this to a variable, so promote it to a variable and call it current. I forgot to delete that one as well, so I'm going to drag that one out and set it. And then we're going to plug the current in as the current, and target, we're going to leave that as 0. Delta time is going to be get world delta seconds. Now we want to reset the current back to 1 after we reset our after this gets reset. So when disable PA is false, we want to set this back to 1. And actually we need this to be up here. And now we need to call slowly disable PA. So I'm just going to move all this up here, like so. So if this is true, we're going to disable PA, slowly disable PA. And then we're going to do a do once here. And we're going to reset it when we enable it, and we're going to reset it again when we disable it. In actuality, I think you only really need to reset it after you disable it again. So Yeah. So off of here, we're going to set timer by function name again. And actually, we're just doing this one again, so let's duplicate that instead. Okay, so what we have here is when the bullet intersects with the capsule component, it'll set all bodies below physics blend weight to 1. That should happen quickly enough to where it's fully enabled before the bullet hits the player. That way when the bullet hits the player, we get physics. We get a physical animation reaction. Then we're going to set a timer of 0.2. So after a fifth of a second, we're going to enable this, which will slowly start disabling the physical animation. It'll start blending it back out. And then we're going to set a do once, and so it's only going to do this once. It's going to set this timer one time, and it's going to wait another fifth of a second, and then it's going to call this again, which will disable it and reset the current setting. And then it's also going to reset the do once. So with all that out of the way, let's test it. Alright, so sorry about this, but I forgot to do a few things. So first off, for the bullet needs to be an object type world dynamic, so that it will fall under world dynamic. By default, it puts it to physics body, or physic body, which we don't want. So over here, let's see, yeah, we don't need anything there. So over here under the third world third person character, you need to set the interp speed to 10. That's a decent value. This doesn't need to be set to the reset. I forgot to tell y'all to set the variable to Spino1 for this. Otherwise it'll be empty, it'll say none, and it won't fire for anything. This is local simulation needs to be unchecked as well. And let's see, the mesh should be of type world static, and it should be set to a collision enable type of physics only. And for the capsule, let's see, just make sure that it's overlapping for world dynamic and the custom trace channel that we set up, the PA. And I do believe that's it. So with that out of the way, we can test it, and you get your hit reactions. Now it does this collision. It does seem to stick to the collision sphere, and I'm not exactly sure why. I might have to do a follow-up video on that, but for the most part, it works. Just every now and then it gets trapped on the collision capsule component. But yeah, if you found this helpful, make sure to like and consider subscribing.